You're the bank. And so when we buy that debt, we buy it. The borrower still owes the full amount, but we're buying that debt at a very substantial discount, usually 50, 60 cents on the dollar, maybe less, 40, 30 cents. It just depends on what's going on. And so that's one big advantage, is that we're seeing bigger discounts than most people are seeing buying retail.
All right, Scott Carson out of Austin, Texas, the first note investor that we've had on the show. So super excited to get into the world of finance with you. I know it's a big part of real estate that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as like rental properties and everything else, but this is your full-time gig. So I'm excited to learn more about it.
Yeah, man, been buying debt for over 15 years. That's really, we rehab properties, we do a little wholesaling as we stuff, but I got started really on my ass. Bought a couple rental properties, overpaid for them. Market crash here in Austin back years ago. Was a deadbeat borrower myself, trying to make 3 mortgage payments with no money coming in because I was laid off. So I got exposed to distressed debt pretty fast on the wrong side of the books.
Okay.
But licked my wounds for a while. Got into banking, did that for a while, and then had a buddy started a mortgage company here in Austin. We were doing mortgages in about 30 states, and one of our big investors and sponsors was a note guy who taught creative financing. And from 2004 to 2008, I really had kind of like a 4-year apprenticeship in learning about debt and financing. And then when everything hit the fan in late 2008, I just stopped on the origination side and then just started buying debt, started calling the same banks and lenders that we originated for, and started buying mortgages. And now fast forward 15 years later, we bought over $1 billion in debt, thousands of properties on residential and commercial notes all across the United States. And I like to call it the sexy side of real estate, where you don't deal with toilets, tints, and trash outs or rehabs for the most part.
Just deal with the money. So you've done a lot really quick, and you kind of just glossed over a whole middle bit there. So most of the people that listen to this show are relatively sophisticated with real estate, but maybe you can give a general breakdown about how note investing works and what exactly that process looks like. So I think what a lot of people don't realize is you're buying the debt as an asset, typically buying it at a discount. And that's something that doesn't even come across the radar for most people.
Yeah, I'm really glad you bring that up there, Mike. And that's the big thing. When we buy the debt, we're buying a note. That's the mortgage on a residential commercial property. And we're only buying first liens 99.9% of the time. That's the senior lien. And we're buying from a variety of hedge funds, banks, institutions, other debt investors as well. And what we end up buying 75% of the time is distressed debt. And this is stuff where people haven't paid their mortgage in 6 months to 10 years in some cases. It's hard to believe that a bank won't foreclose in 10 years, but we see stuff like this. And so we get these lists sent to us from banks, lending institutions, and servicing companies. And there may be one note on there, maybe 1,000 that we can cherry pick from. And when we buy that debt, we don't actually own the property. And that's one of the big caveats I'd like to make aware, because a lot of people, I'm buying the note, I own the property. No. You're the bank. And so when we buy that debt, we buy it. The borrower still owes the full amount, but we're buying that debt at a very substantial discount, usually 50, 60 cents on the dollar, maybe less, 40, 30 cents. It just depends on what's going on. And so that's one big advantage, is that we're seeing bigger discounts than most people are seeing buying retail. Now, obviously, we've got to do some things to be able to collect on that non-performing debt. Our favorite strategy is just to reach out to the homeowner, the borrower, and say, hey, you want to start paying again? Let's work out some sort of payment plan, modification, whatever it might be, to get them back on track. And we love cash flow off of that. I don't want to foreclose unless I have to, but we still end up having to foreclose about 20, 30% of the time. But the fact that we buy it at a discount gives us a lot of flexibility to be flexible with the borrowers that the original lender that originated didn't really have. The bank was happy to sell it at 50 cents a dollar to us, because now they have 50% in. They can go lend that money out and arbitrage it and rinse and repeat that 10, 12 times a year. Mm-hmm. But we, at a discount, that gives us all the flexibility we need with the borrower. And then we're getting the borrower to start making payments to us on a monthly basis for cash flow, maybe a little bit of extra above their normal payment for extra skin in the game, or we'll ask for some extra payments on the front end to modify it. And then our whole goal with this stuff, Mike, is to hold it for cash flow. We hold it for cash flow for 12, 24, 36 months, or longer. I've got some that have held on for like 6 years. The borrower's been paying on time, Um, but we have the opportunity that when it's a borrower who started to pay on time for 12 months, it's now reclassified to the non-performing as reperforming. And what a lot of funds do, they'll buy non-performing stuff, try to work it out with the homeowners, get them back on track. And then in 12 months' time of on-time payments, they'll turn around and sell that debt back to Wall Street, back to other investors at 85, 90 cents on the dollar.
Oh, wow.
Without ever owning the real estate. So you get cash, you get some lump sum on the front end, skin in the game from the borrowers, usually 4 to 5 months, monthly cash flow that may be at or above what they were supposed to be paying, and then a lump sum on the back end now that that loan is reperforming. And, what's great about this stuff is, we're direct, so we're often seeing really clean assets from banks and lenders. Yeah. We are able, it's a different animal when it comes to marketing than most investors are used to. A lot of investors are used to direct mail or postcards or bandit signs or whatever like that. We don't spend any money on that stuff. All of our stuff is like direct marketing, like LinkedIn to asset managers or harvesting an email list of banks, secondary marketing professionals and drip marketing them on a monthly basis. And every bank has notes available for sale. Some of them just don't want to sell stuff, especially your smaller one branch institutions. They're too conservative. They can't really take a discount. But you start getting to regional size banks or servicing companies or funds, they usually will have more stuff they're looking to sell. Of course, Bank of America, Chase City, they've got notes to sell, but they're not going to sell them anything less than like a $50 million pool. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to sell them at a big discount for the most part anyway, because they're so leveraged and they've got money so cheap. But there's still tons and tons and tons of deals out there for investors like you to me who can pick up one note, 2 notes, a dozen notes. I mean, on Monday alone, I got a list in from a servicing company of 291 non-performing notes that I can cherry pick from. My bids will be roughly around 52% of value. All right. I got another one with 179 notes that were non-performing. They're a little bit further defaulted, so my bids are a little bit lower at roughly 49% of value. And I also got a list of 65 notes that were reperforming that our offer, if they accept it, is going to be about a 15 yield on the cash flow basis for things. On the non-performing side, the ones we make offers on, we'll probably get reperforming 60% of the time. The other 40% will be a mixture of foreclosure or incentivizing the borrower to sign the property over by giving cash for keys or offering a deed in lieu of forgiveness of debt. So I know I unpacked a lot of stuff there, but that's kind of note investing in a basis is not really going after real estate in like one zip code or one city. I'm investing in 25 to 30 states. Yeah. And so it's really kind of unpacking, knowing the foreclosure laws in the state. Each state's a little bit different, knowing values, but we don't do a very big deep dive on the front end. We get a spreadsheet, run some quick numbers, run some formulas, make some offers. And then the fund will either initially accept our offers. Then once they accept our offers, we do a deep dive. And if we find stuff that's wrong with the asset, we can reduce our bid. We find a ton of taxes are owed or the value's not there, what based at the value of the day based on, we can reduce our bid or just kill it off if it doesn't make sense for what we're doing long term.
That's crazy. So, because like at the core, kind of what you're doing, it's similar to wholesaling real estate, right? But you're working with the loan holder. But you go through, you have the distressed debt, you're working with a distressed seller or borrower, I guess. And then you make, you kind of have like the rental property aspect of like cash flow where you make it as you get it reestablished and reperforming, but then you make a larger sum of money when you exit after 12 to 24 months. So that's fascinating. So like, what are your, like when you're going through that and you're doing the underwriting, how many of these sort of deals do you have to look at for everyone that you buy? Like, are you like,
good question,
20 or 30 of these?
I love it. So what we always say, you probably have about a 10, when you're brand new, you're probably gonna have a 10% closing ratio off of offers. So if you want to get one accepted, you'll be making like 10 offers.
That's not bad though.
It's
like
not.
Even compared to like off-market real estate, we'll look at 17 to 20 to 30 sometimes, depending on the time of year.
Now it'll vary too on where you're buying. Like if you want to buy in like Austin, Texas, you know what? I don't buy much in Austin, Texas at all. I haven't bought anything in Austin, Texas in 10 years. So if I was just trying to buy notes in Austin, Texas, I would have gone broke a long time ago because you don't see a lot of distressed assets here. Mm-hmm. And Texas has a fast foreclosure market. So the banks that do sell stuff here, they know that it's going to sell fast. So they just don't don't take that big a discount. So I buy a lot in like Ohio, Michigan, Indiana. I like the Hoosier State. I like the Carolinas. I've bought tons of stuff down in God's waiting room, Florida. You know what I mean? Back in the day, I was buying condos at five cents on the dollar. I'm still buying stuff at 50, 60 cents on the dollar because it's a year to foreclose. So when it's a longer foreclosure time frame like that, I ask for a bigger discount because I'm going to have more holding costs. It's going to cost me more to foreclose too. So like you're in Washington State, up that neck of the woods in Spokane, don't buy that much stuff up there. You know, there are some states that require specific licenses individually to operate. Like Washington State wants you to be a licensed mortgage broker to buy debt in Washington State. Whereas about 75% of the states in the country, you don't have to be a licensed mortgage broker. You just have to hire a loan servicing company who's a debt collector in that state to collect on your behalf or to do the borrower outreach. So it's really a vendor-driven business in a lot of cases. You know, I've got a small staff that helps with marketing and a little bit of due diligence and stuff like that. But we really rely heavily on servicing companies to do a lot of the borrower outreach and the collecting of payments and sending out statements. And then, of course, attorneys, should we have to foreclose? And yes, you've got to have a different attorney in every different state. And that's okay. That's why you buy it at a discount. You just figure in, $3,000 to $6,000 in foreclosure costs per asset across the board.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that's interesting too about it, because it's in the finance business, there's a ton of industries and professionals that are involved in that. So it's not like off-market real estate where you're kind of having to piece together teams and figure out like individual players that are willing to play along.
We do have some of that fast. I'm not going to lie. A little bit. Especially if we're doing in due diligence on an asset. We've always got to find realtors. We can pay a national company to pull a BPO, and that's great, but we always still like to put eyes on every asset. I mean, I'm not flying out and looking at 300 assets. We'll look at online to see what kind of pictures and the dates of those Google Maps as a good indicator, kind of maybe what the initial valuation or condition of the properties. But then we're still going to put a realtor locally to drive by it and pull current comps and look at the market, because the market's changed in the last 6 months. Days on market have escalated, and that's also a big thing we have to look at our exit strategies. Can we sell this asset in 90 days if we need to? If it's going to be 180 days, well, then we've really got to reduce our bid and reduce our value of that asset based on a quick sale price. It's different than a traditional value of the property. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when you're underwriting these as well, you mentioned like the foreclosure laws in the general market. Do you ever look at like the seller demographics and seller temperaments in these markets? So with our main business, we're mainly a wholesale brand, right? We do it all over the country. We're currently active in 12 different markets. And what we always have to sort of cater the conversations to is around the seller cultures, because they're all different. And one of the big things that we look at is, since you're buying something with tenants or buying something with squatters, is how we approach them in like states that I would say have lower income. Cash for keys is much more effective, right? States that are a little bit more landlord friendly, you can bring the law down on them a little bit more. Do you get into that at all? Or are you more just like on the, I guess like the bigger picture market side?
No, that dictates the states that we market in and buy in. Like I won't buy in Chicago. Okay. I won't buy in Cook County. It's so corrupt. It's difficult to evict anybody there. So been there, lost money, got the scars. Just nope. Anything in Cook County, it's getting deleted off. Okay.
Yeah.
New York State, New Jersey, we delete those because they take 2 years in New Jersey, 3 years in New York to foreclose. And that's not even evicting somebody yet. You know what I mean? COVID was a bit of a ass kicker because we couldn't foreclose or evict anybody for 12 to 18 months. Fortunately, most of our portfolios stayed performing and did quite well. But that drug out foreclosures in a lot of markets that you're like Florida. Florida can take you a year to foreclose, easy. And the cash for keys is something that you've got to reach out and try to negotiate. So that's the thing is, our biggest goal isn't to own the real estate, though. It's literally just trying to get the borrower on track and say, listen, I mean, I've bought notes that borrowers have been trying to modify their loan for 4 or 5 years, and their loan's been sold and sold and sold. But when we are doing due diligence and we are looking at these, servicing notes or these collateral files, we'll see short sale files where borrowers have sent in stuff. And I see these hardship letters like, this borrower wants to stay. This is stupid. Let's call them up and negotiate this right now. And, a lot of times we find that, especially when you're dealing with lower socioeconomic individuals, we buy a lot of stuff at $250,000 or less. But like parts of like Ohio or Michigan, that's like might be LeBron James' house out that neck of the woods versus a shanty in other places. But
Yeah.
just having somebody that people can talk to. I mean, everybody's going through financial difficulties at some point in their life, whether it's job loss or sickness or a death in the family or divorce. Sometimes people just need a reset. And I think me going through a rough time when I first became an investor really helped me empathize with borrowers that are in tough situations. It was one mistake I made early on as a note investor in 2008 and 9 is we have all these foreclosures, all these borrowers aren't worthy of staying. And I didn't modify a lot of stuff in my first 2 years. And looking back, I should have modified everything because I would have had cash flow immediately versus servicing and legal costs coming out of the books and then having to rehab those properties. I could have just kept people in it and my ROI would have been even higher without all the headaches. You know what I mean? And that's one thing that we really love doing. If we can keep somebody in the house and it's going to be a double-digit return for us or greater, it's a win-win. I don't have to try to squeeze the borrowers for every dollar they got because then I found that investors that try to do that borrower ends up defaulting later on, and it's really a downhill spiral. There's times that we've forgiven debt right off the bat. Or like I bought a note in Cleveland, Ohio, and it wasn't worth much at all. It was a $16,000 worth house, so it was not. It was like a shack, really. And I think my cost base was $1,000. I'm like, I don't want to foreclose on this house. I don't want to take the asset back. Let me just and the borrower living it, single mom with 4 kids. I'm like, listen, tell you what, Christmas came in July. I'm just going to forgive you of the money that you owe. I think she owed like 60 grand on this property. I'm like, I'm just going to forgive you. Do whatever you want with it. Merry Christmas to you. I don't want to foreclose on it. And sometimes when you do that, it's amazing. Now I'm writing off $1,000. Whoopee freaking doodah. It's not that big a deal. I'm losing it, but those are the kind of things that we can help people stay in their houses in a lot of cases. It's like do some good, and that's the beautiful thing. We get paid really well to keep people in their houses if we can.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something that gets so lost on people when they're trying to get into this business. And something that we preach a lot. It is a people business, right? And even wholesale business, the wholesale business, people say like we're equity stealers, doing all those sort of things. The vast majority of the people that we work with, they don't have any other options, and we've done all sorts of wacky stuff to help people out. And the note buying side, it sounds like it's quite the same. So as you're going through these, I imagine, with the amount of volume you're doing, you've done $1 billion over the last 15 years. I mean, I'm just assuming you're not sitting on $1 billion cash. You must have some kind of arbitrage that you do on this. So like, what does that look like? And what are the legalities of it? Because I know when you're raising money, if you're raising money to tie it to other debt, there's different rules versus if you're raising money to tie it to a hard asset. So how does all that structured?
Great question. And what we do is we work with a lot of IRA investors out there, and depending on what somebody's going to invest with us, we'll structure it a little bit differently. So if like somebody's bringing 50 grand to 100 grand, we'll put them in our fund and pay them a flat, annual return, 6-8%, something like that. They're just getting a flat
just like
return on investment. Yeah, like a pref. They're not getting anything in the back end. It's just a flat. Especially if they're not. That's the one thing is when we talk to investors, we're always asking, "What have you done? What are you investing in?" If they haven't done anything in the last 2 or 3 years, I'm not going to give them 12% because they're not going to go do it for themselves. But 6 and 8% is damn good right now. For passive returns. If somebody brings $250,000 or greater, then what we might do is create a separate special purpose LLC just for that one investor, buy 5 or 6, and then we will go splitsies on that deal. And if it's cash flows, great, they're getting a split of cash flow. Our normal turnaround time on that isn't going to be like 90 days. It's going to be like 24 to 36 months because it takes time to work those assets out and go that route. But they'll be co-owner of the LLC and go from there. You can't have somebody fund a note and then give them a pref rate and then split the back. That would be technically selling a security, and that's illegal. So we don't do that unless we're actually in an LLC together. They're funding the LLC, and then we're going that route for that. And we've got a fund that we're working on. It's a Reg A right now. Then we'll be able to do a pref and a split of the back end. We're just, how that goes. Jumping through hoops takes a little bit of time to get that done.
Oh my God, it's such a headache. Even on some of the stuff that we've worked to bring in partners on acquisitions, and if it's a 503C, a 503B, or like how you're going to structure it to JV, and they're all kind of different, ups and downs for each one. So that makes sense. On that same note, how about like taxes? So like, for example, this is me just being completely ignorant right now. Can someone like 1031 from like real estate sale into debt, or can they 1031 from like one kind of debt into another kind of debt?
That's a great question. No, you can't actually use a 1031 exchange because it's got to go from
Okay.
hard asset to another hard asset. Okay.
Okay. What about debt? Like, could you sell some debt that you had, like, let's say a massive gain on in 1031 into another kind of debt?
No, because your debt, it's still got to be the asset. So if you're
Still
buying
has
an
to be the
apartment
asset.
complex and you're selling the apartment complex, you've still got to go into a physical asset. Okay.
Yeah.
Notes are not the physical asset. So you
Interesting.
can't do that. But here's how we've helped people that have that is if you're taking cash and you're putting it into an asset
Mm-hmm.
and you're buying that asset cash, you're not doing any financing, then go get a line of credit against that asset and use that line of credit to fund note purchases. Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing is that you get with real estate is you get a lot of deductions and dollar cost. Oh my gosh, not dollar cost averaging, but depreciation you can write off. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Cost segregation. Well, you don't get it right off depreciation on being a note investor, but we do get to write off a lot of the debt that we forgive. So, like if I buy a note and the borrower's in at 120 grand and the house is only worth 100, when we modify that loan to 100 in 12 months, we just forgave them 20 grand. So we write that 20 grand off by 1099 them, and that reduces a lot of our profits. Or I guess you could say paper profits on paper, it looks like when we haven't realized it yet,
That's interesting. Is that like a strategy that you do on an annual basis then?
Oh, yeah.
You basically go through and you look at everything and try to get your line to zero.
Yeah, we try to. I mean, if I'm paying Uncle Sam, I'm paying Uncle Sam. And sometimes that's a good thing. But here, what we end up doing is when we do take an asset back, like I've got an asset right now in Florida that we foreclosed on. We're finishing the eviction this week, thank God. It's been 14 months in the making. We got COVID kind of delayed things a little bit. We'll take that asset back and then fix it up. And then we'll be able to write some of that depreciation off. So you're having it when you're a note investor, you really need a good bookkeeper that understands both the note side of the business and then also the real estate side of what you can and can't do in a lot of cases. So, we write a lot of stuff off, write a lot of debt off. Sometimes when we're buying in bulk too, we know we're going to take some assets that have no value that we'll take it just to write it off, knowing that it'll get us a bigger discount off the pristine assets that we want to own, and a lot of funds will do that. When they're buying a big bulk stuff, their top 25% of that asset portfolio is really there to make back what they paid for the assets. The middle 50% is where they're going to make most of their profit margins, and it's not going to be huge rehabs. It may be, I call it bread and butter assets, where you get a borrow paying $500 a month or $600 a month on cash flow basis, and you hold it for a while. The bottom 25% is really the tail that you got to get creative on if you're going to buy it, and that may be deed in lieu, cash for keys, forgiving the debt, selling it to somebody locally at just a rock bottom price, let somebody else take on that deal. I've got a contract with one hedge fund where it shows $7 for like 30 assets. And they're like, how the hell did you get these for $7? I said, well, this was costing that asset manager $95 a month in servicing. They're crappy. I can donate those all to local cities for parks, or I can call the next door neighbor and, get a deed in lieu or work to just sell it to the next door neighbor for $100 each and make something happen at it. So a lot of what we do is making lemonade out of lemon sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it gets creative, and the beauty is you can do this business from anywhere. I'm in Austin, Texas, but I've closed deals and when I was in, Spain or on a cruise ship, because you've got such a great, strong team with vendors of servicing and attorneys to help handle a lot of the heavy lifting once you end up buying something that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the big things I think a lot of people will ask about this is with the security aspect. So obviously, you can claim the property back if you go through a foreclosure. What's your typical exit strategy at that point? You're already relatively secure because you probably bought that at like a 40-50% discount, which puts you in an okay position. So at that point, are you looking to like sell the debt again? Or are you like just listing the property on the MLS as is? Are you trying to wholesale it to a cash buyer? I guess probably all kind of depends.
It all depends on the asset. So once and here's the thing, if you go through a foreclosure, that's a strategy to kind of take the property back, the legal aspect of it. That should wipe out everything except tax liens. You still got to pay taxes. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then it's an REO at that point. If you get a deed in lieu from the borrower, the way that the courts and everything, the legal system, once the borrower signs the deed in lieu, literally signs it, you are responsible for that property. Even if you haven't filed it, you are still technically responsible for that property because they've deeded the property back to you. It all depends on the condition of the property. If the property needs to be cleaned and we can list it on the MLS at basically full price, we'll do that. If it needs a little bit of rehab, paint and carpet, maybe appliances, we'll do that and then list on the MLS. If it needs a heavy rehab, no, we'll just move it to somebody else, a wholesaler. We'll advertise it in a RIA club or meet up as a handyman fixer, stuff like that. One of the great things we've been doing this for a while is that we got a pretty good network across the country that we can distribute things to. And, we use a lot of text messaging when we have something like that. We can pull a list of people that are in Memphis. Hey, we got this rehab property. We just take it back. Take a look at the property's available for 3 hours on Tuesday. Bids are due by Friday if you want to proceed and stuff like that. So we move stuff a lot that way as well.
Do you ever sell stuff like subject to? So like, for example, if your debt's cheaper than like an end buyer's hard money cost and the property isn't terrible and you find a good buyer, so you sell it to them with like the previous owners, or I guess like at your point, it'd be a seller wrap or something, wouldn't it? Or like a seller finance.
So you gotta realize if we take the property back, that's distinguished the loan. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we own the real estate. There's no existing financing in place.
Yeah, right. So it'd be a seller finance, though.
Yeah, we would seller finance it. And seller financing is a horrible exit strategy. And that's kind of controversial because there's people out there making money on seller finance your property. You'll make more in income over the time, which is actually false. Because here's the thing: let me just give you a strategy. Got a house that's worth $100. I buy it at $50,000, $5,000 to foreclose, deed in lieu, whatever it is. I'm in at $55,000. That's my cost basis. Okay. Well, if I owner finance it to somebody at $100,000, I just tied up that $45,000 equity that I can't touch. Mm-hmm. I can't do anything. I can't go get a loan against it because I need seasoning of that asset to be really 90 days for a traditional lender to give me a loan on it. And most of them aren't going to give me, that number off 100. They're only going to give it off what the foreclosure price was. And if I owner finance him, I got to hold on to that note now for 12 months to make sure that he's got seasoning. I got to make sure the borrower's got a 620 FICO score or greater. Make sure there's FICO score, and then I can maybe sell that note off to get a big chunk of it. Where it makes more sense for me just to list the house on the MLS and sell it traditionally, or list it at 85, 90 cents and get multiple people in and sell it traditionally. I don't want to create new notes, because it's just a pain in the ass to cash out. It always makes more sense when you look at numbers, and then I can cash out of that deal, make 100, get my 100, my $55,000 back plus my 45 in profit. Now go buy two and do the same thing. 2 turns into 4, 4 turns into 8, 8 turns into 16, and I'm not that long delay. I get people all the time that call me, hey, I owner finance a property. Will you buy my note? I'm like, well, when did you originate? Oh, a month ago. I'm like, well, I'll give you maybe 60 cents on the dollar. I'm like, oh, what? I'm like, because you have no seasoning. The borrower's got below a 620 FICO. They brought 5%, not 10% down. You overfinance the property. The house is only worth 100, but you finance 125 because you're the bank. Well, when you do that, you better expect to hold on to stuff. And that people just don't know how to underwrite or create that stuff. And then, of course, they've got to go through Dodd Frank compliance. You got to hire an MLO. And I'm like, oh, I just did this once, so I don't need that. I'm like, well, your paper is the napkin with my bourbon and rum on. It's more valuable than the paper you finance that house with.
Yeah, right. And that's something that I think that's a very valid point that you said there with the Dodd Frank. A lot of people don't realize that when it comes to debt, the different legalities around that. And can you give like a brief, like 5-second, 1 minute overview about what exactly that is? Yeah,
Dodd Frank was a law that was enabled by Bernie Frank, and I don't know the other senators' names after 2008. It was basically to set some standards up that people that were going to owner finance a property had to make sure that the borrower, or even traditional lenders too, it's not just owner financing, that all lenders who were going to either do traditional lending or an owner finance had to comply to make sure that the borrower could actually, afford the property. I mean, that's a novel concept that I'm going to finance it to you, make sure you're able to afford it. So there's specific laws, there's specific percentages, there's specific things you've got to do in checking and verifying income. And the thing that always cracks me up is when you've got to predict that the borrower can afford that property 3 years from now. I mean, who has a crystal ball? But that's Congress for you. So what the great thing is with us buying existing debt is we're only usually buying 99% of the time we're buying from banks and hedge funds. So all the loans that we're buying are already Dodd Frank compliant. So I don't have to jump through the hoops. If I modify I don't have to Dodd Frank compliant because they're already approved that way. Now, if I were to initiate a new loan, yes, I would have to jump through Dodd Frank compliance. Totally fine. But being the lender, if somebody comes to me and they're struggling to make their payments, one of the things we ask them, hey, do you have somebody that wants to take over the payments subject to the terms? Mm-hmm. And so we'll let people do subject to deals all day long as that new payee can pay the mortgage and go from that route. Another thing that for those that are subject to investors, like I get these lists in from banks all the time with non-performing loans. If we make offers on a chunk of them and they don't get accepted, well, we send a subject to letter out to the homeowners as well, trying to take over the property subject to.
There you go.
So, and we have that's a side business of what we do as a note investor, and we may take over 1 to 4 properties subject to each month, and just doing that follow up drip campaign. And we know that the buyer of that note it would probably want a loan mod, so that's what we do is we'll take it over subject to and then negotiate a loan mod on favorable terms for us.
Yeah. Huh. I mean, it's sort of like different entry strategies into the deal, just depending on who you're talking to. That's smart.
Well, because here's the thing. A lot of these distressed notes, you don't see them anywhere. They're not going to show up on like PropStream. They may show up in a default aspect if the bank has already filed the legal side, like filed the list pendants or the notice of default. You may see it in those. But a lot of times we're seeing these deals 6 to 12 months ahead of most normal investors seeing these assets on the MLS or the foreclosure markets. We see them way ahead of time, and it gives us that, a lot of stuff that I buy will never show up on the open market because we modified it or, worked to keep the borrower in the house or come to some sort of agreement with them before we ever got to that legal of finalizing the foreclosure side.
Yeah. I mean, and that alone is worth its weight in gold, right? Being able to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, like anything you can do to get access to opportunity before like the general crowd. I mean, that's the greatest way to make a lot of money, honestly.
Well, and that's the thing is, when we make contact with a bank's not just sending us one note and then never talking to us again. They're literally sending us tapes and spreadsheets every month, every quarter. And that becomes a great way for us to consistently just drip market. Hey, what do you have on your books this quarter or this month that you're looking to get rid of? Nothing. No, we'll follow up next month, and just getting stuff that so we're not spending a huge amount of overhead on like postcards or SEO or anything like that. It's all email blasts and then reaching out to new asset managers on like LinkedIn and connecting with them that way.
Yeah. That's awesome. So for people who are kind of interested in this, what is like a general return expectation that people can get?
Great question. There's kind of a couple phases to it. So if you want something that's very passive, you're not doing any work, you can actually buy performing or reperforming notes. Okay. If you're going to buy a performing note, you can probably buy a performing note right now at a pretty decent 6%, 7% return to you. Okay. Mm-hmm. It can be direct from a bank, direct from a lender. There's stuff that would sell newly originated stuff off. If you're looking for something a little higher, you can buy reperforming notes where maybe the borrower was non-performing for a while and somebody like me got the borrower back on track, and we'll sell it to an investor at a 10 to 15% cash and cash return. Okay. It's going to be with a servicer. They're collecting payments. You're going to buy it at a bit of a discount. So if you ever do it to foreclose, you're going to make your money back. If you want a higher return, then you're going to go more the non-performing side, and that's going to be more active aspect of that. So when I look at non-performing stuff, I want to see where I'm going to make either around a 24 to 25% yield. So if I've got to pay money costs, I'm still going to see a 12 to 18% return for us. If it's going to be an asset that I'm going to foreclose on, I want to make sure that we're seeing at least $20,000 in profit to make it worth our time to foreclose on above the foreclosure. Now, that may be more if we rehab the property. It might be a little bit less, but that's kind of what our ballpoint that stuff is looking for.
Okay. So that 25% yield, that's like...
it's based on if we're
like
off of what. Yeah, exactly.
Or is that including the exit?
That's an annual, basically. If we can take their monthly P&I payment times 12 and divide that into what we're paying for the note, that's what we're kind of looking for, 20 to 25% yield on that. Okay.
No shit. And does that include the exit when you sell the note?
It doesn't include the exit. It doesn't include the exit because here's the thing: we're going to figure in like 4 extra months of payments. There will be some skin in the game from the borrower on that to keep them in the house because we don't get any skin in the game. They're going to default again.
Yep.
All right. So we're looking for that 20% yield at least usually to maintain it because if we're paying 6% or 8%, we want to see 12% after our money costs for the most part. And then who knows what we can sell it for? We don't ever plan on that in the backside, but yeah, if we can buy it at 50, let's just run some numbers here. Say we buy a $100,000 note and the borrower's got a 6% interest rate, right? So they're paying $6,000 a year is what they're supposed to pay, which comes down to $500 a month, right? Well, if we buy that at, say, 50 cents on the dollar, we paid 50 grand for it. Okay. Well, if they're paying $6,000 a year right there off the top. If you take $6,000 divided by 50, hang on here, I got people calling me. So we take $6,000, divide that by $50,000. That's a 12% return right there to us, just off of that alone. Now, if we get them to bring 6 months to the table, now that returns an 18%. Okay. We hold that for a period of 12 months, and then we sell it at 85% or 85,000. We just realized another $35,000 in profit. So there are deals that we're into that we're making high 20s, 30% over a 12 to 18 month period because we bought it at a discount, we put the work into it, and then we cashed out with a nice lump sum later on. Okay.
Shit. I think I'm done with houses, man. This sounds way better.
Well, it all depends on the market too. Like I brought a note one time from a borrower that was going to foreclosure the next month. Why the borrower sold it? I mean, why the bank sold it to me, I'll never know. But they did. We bought it at 40. We sold it at the auction 2 weeks later at 88 and made $48,000. We knew we were going to foreclose. Another one, they sold me a note, very similar numbers, but we thought we'd have to foreclose. And the idiots at the bank didn't see that the borrower had already signed the property over to them. There was a deed in lieu sitting on top of the collateral file when we got it. We're like, great. Let's just sell this thing. We sold it in a hot market and made it. And we got another deal like right now. It's a Florida deal. It's worth $1.2 million. Borrower, when we first bought it, it was worth $950. The asset was. Borrower originally financed it for $695. Did a hard money loan and then never paid. Okay, and he's drugged this out, played all these tricks, filed bankruptcy. Well, now his debt is $1.2 million. Okay, we bought this roughly about 14 months ago, knowing we were going to have to go through a long foreclosure process. But we paid, get this, $441,000 for a $950,000 asset.
Oh my God.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Crazy, right? It's going to be a nice like $300,000, $400,000 payday, even after paying our investor a nice chunk of money on that to finance the deal.
And even if you burn the freaking thing down, like you can rebuild it and still have some.
Well, that's why insurances are a case of an active God or an angry borrower. So if they do trash it, great. We file an insurance claim and we dance all the way to the bank, and then we sue the borrower for vandalism and arson.
Yeah, right.
But that's the thing. I mean, sometimes we'll get notes in where a borrower may own a portfolio of real estate, and they got a loan on one they haven't been paying. They've been robbing from Peter to pay Paul. And those are always interesting conversations. Like, listen, we know you've got these other 10 assets that are in your name or same LLC. Just either do something with this note with us or deed it over to us. Because otherwise, if we foreclose, we're going to slap a judgment against all your other assets.
Yeah.
Or if we forgive the debt and you're underwater, just we'll send you a 1099. Just file an IRS form 928 or something like that they can show to be insolvent, and they're not going to pay any taxes on that. So we work with a lot of people. We tried to do something. Always tried to do something that's a win-win. Sometimes you got assholes out there that want to play games, and the bank always wins. You're not dealing with me; you're dealing with my attorneys, and my attorneys are undefeated right now.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're a debt holder too, you have so many more rights on a property versus even being like a landlord, where you're securing the debt. But at the end of the day, everything is going towards helping the bank out that you have your mortgage with, not necessarily with you. That's
so true, and that's one thing about what happened here in COVID. You had all these small mom and pop landlords who were left with the short end of the stick. The tenants didn't have to pay. Uncle Joe's going to save them. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. No. Yeah, but the bank, many times the bank's like, okay, we understand what's going on. We'll give you 6 months. We'll give you another 6 months. Well, that's what's causing. So you have a lot of these borrowers out there who are the landlords. They're still not made whole, and they're still struggling to get by. You're going to see a lot of that in small multifamily. Already seeing it, and even bigger multifamily. Get a lot of these investors go buy these multifamily value add. They're going to add the value up and then refinance out in 3 to 5 years once the property's regentrified. Well, with interest rates going up, that has killed a lot of these deals down. Now the property isn't worth as much as it was because their debt service coverage ratio has gone down, which reduces the value. Their operating income is gone down some because of lack of payments and stuff. So you're going to getting a lot of mature loans where the borrowers were, the investors were paying on time, but now the bank wants 10, 20, 30% capital to get them back to a 70% value or 70% of value. And a lot of these operators don't have that 10, 20, 30%. They're not going to go back, and their investors that they got the money from aren't going to have that to pony up. So We saw a lot of this back in 2010, and we're starting to see some defaults and stuff like that happen right now. And so I'm pretty excited about what's going to take place the next 24 to 36 months on the note investing side. And,
Yeah.
we're already seeing more inventory than we've seen in a while. It's always an interesting thing, Mike, when banks start calling and emailing me on what I'm buying. It's usually the other way around. But when they start reaching out to me, hey, what are you buying? I'm like, oh, hey, this is a song by a different tune. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the lead flow is starting to turn out.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, I mean, I love everything you're saying, man. You got my brain really turning. So, I guess one last question before we go into the end of show questions here is: someone's listening to this, they have a couple $100,000, they want to go and invest in a note, right? Where do they find that? Because obviously you have banking relationships, but how can someone that's going to do like one or two, how can they get started with this?
The first thing you got to learn is you got to get educated. That's the first thing, because it's a different mindset. I've seen a lot of fix and flippers, landlords, stuff like that, that decide they want to jump in the note business. They overpay for an asset, or they buy something in a market that doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you got to understand you're owning the note, not the asset. Okay.
Yep.
And one of the things that we love to help people out with is we teach classes on this stuff. So if you want to learn, that's great. But every third Saturday, I teach a one-day class called Note Weekend. It's kind of the Cliff Notes version of note investing. A lot of new investors, they love it because we show you how to find, fund, and flip these things. But it's usually $99. But for the Collecting Keys audience, I'm giving it to you for free.
Oh, sweet.
So if you go to noteweekend.com, let's just say collecting is the keyword. It'll give it to you for free. And you don't have to be live. It's recorded as well, too, so you can catch the replays. But that's a great way to kind of get your feet wet without any investment. There are platforms out there for investors to go take a look at. Auction.com has their commercial side, 10X. There's a couple other websites. I always tell folks, hey, reach out to me. You never know what we've got available and what you're looking for. Schedule a call with me, then I can help guide you in the right path. And such a straight, like if you're in California, I want to buy something in San Diego for $250,000. I'm like, good luck with that. It might be better for you to take that $250,000 and go buy a dozen notes in Memphis, because your money's going to be leveraged out and spread out. So if you've got a dozen assets and you have one borrower or one tenant doesn't pay, guess what? You still got 11 that are performing notes for you, versus one asset that one borrower doesn't pay, then you're not getting anything. And so that's why we kind of love those more value add states in a lot of cases, because our money goes a lot further.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's good stuff. So noteweekend.com. I'm definitely gonna check that out because I'm super interested in everything going on.
There you go. I'll send you the links and everything to it for you. This video. It's about 8 hours of me teaching, and then about 8 hours of additional other videos and training for you about the business and things.
Awesome. I like it. Cool. Awesome, Scott. Well, thanks so much for all the knowledge, man. There's tons of great stuff in here. We're gonna dive into our end of show questions here as we start to wrap up.
Hang on 1 second though. If you're listening to this show right now, which you are, and Mike is kicking ass and taking a lot of names when it comes to being a great podcast host, make sure you smash that subscribe button, and make sure you leave Mike a 5-star review. He's doing great stuff with his show, so make sure you leave that 5-star review and hit subscribe. All right, go ahead. Let's continue. I just wanted to get that out before we got going there, Mike.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks, Scott. You'll save me saying it at the end, but no, yeah, I do appreciate that. Thank you. Certainly trying. All right, so the end of show questions here. First question, which is always the group favorite. We can modify it a little bit for you as well. But we always ask people, what is their craziest real estate investing story? And I know a lot of your stuff has been on the note end, but either way, dealing with foreclosures and all that sort of things, I'm sure you still have some pretty crazy ones.
Man, I got tons of stories on this stuff. Some of the craziest stuff. I bought a note where the borrower died and been dead in the house for like 2 years, and our realtor found the dead body. For
2 years?
2 years. It had been sitting there vacant, and he'd been in a closet, and the realtor walked in taking photos because we were changing the locks, and there he was. There's what was remained of the body in the closet.
Oh, man.
And so
that's crazy.
There's one. I bought a note one time. It was on an 8-plex outside of Charlotte in Concord. It turns out it was a working brothel.
Okay.
So I was like, well, does that mean it's a commercial asset, it's cash flowing? Why can't you make your mortgage payment if you're, you're charging by the hour? But there's a really good one here. We bought this note in South Beloit, Illinois, and it was a bar, husband and wife that lived there for 18 years, raised their 3 daughters. They had taken out some money when the values went up, got a loan for like $60,000, which isn't nothing. But then the market values dropped, and the husband had a heart attack, was out of work. And so when we got this note sent to us, they owed 60. It was maybe worth 35,000, and we bought the note for $12,000. So we bought it for 30 cents on the dollar of owed, and roughly 20 cents of the UPB, as we call it, the unpaid balance. But the borrower had been trying to modify for 4 years. There was 4 years of tax returns and hardship letters. And so when I got it, I was like, this lady's a slam dunk for a mod. So I called her up, get her on the phone, tell her, hey, I'm now your bank. And she just like, oh, it's been sold again. I was like, yes, but this is your lucky day. Can you start making your existing payments? She's like, yeah, I could do that. I was like, great. So that was like $450 a month. I said, if you start making your existing monthly payment, that's great. Can you bring anything to the table? Can you bring like $5,000 to the table? She's like, no, I don't have that. So, well, do you have 2,500? She's like, yes. Great. You bring 2,500 to the table. You pay $450 a month. Can you pay anything extra on top of that? She's like, I could pay $200 extra per month. I was like, there we go. 2,500, 2,400. That's my $5,000 that I want extra. Okay. I said, if you do that for a year, what I'll do at the end of the year is we'll modify your loan. We'll drop the interest rate from, I think it was like 9% to 0% for you. We'll adjust the balance. We'll appraise your property at that point and reduce anything, forgive anything above the value, so that you're making 100% of your payment at that point of $450 a month goes to principal reduction, and you'll have your house paid off in not 33 years, but in 6 years. And she's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, go do it. Well, if you figure the numbers, I was making $10,000 in cash flow that first year on a $12,000 investment, right? I'm coming out
100% return.
100, yeah, 88% return my first year, and it was like 20% after. But she went and did this, and they showed up in my attorney's office. The husband had been sick, had a heart attack, couldn't work, but he's back to work. They cried at my attorney's office. They literally broke down crying because they've been trying to do this a long time. 6 months later, around Christmas time, I get a Christmas card in the mail from them. And their eldest daughter, who'd been raised in the house the entire time, had a baby. And they named the baby Carson after me.
No way.
Because
That's
seriously. So we do a lot of good. Of course, we've got enough people that we've had to foreclose on or evict and stuff like that. But, we didn't have to evict the brothel queen. She ended up started paying on time.
she figured it out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome though, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And you're right. Amongst all the dirt bags that you got to kick out because they're being that way, there are a lot of people that you help in this business.
Yeah.
I mean, even on the wholesale side, for all the squatters that we've had to kick out or the drug problems we've had to deal with. I mean, we've also had situations where we've helped people get into apartments. We've even like supplied them furniture and things like that because they didn't have any of it.
Yeah,
and that can change people's lives. But that's cool. That's a very, very cool story. And, financially, but also just the whole view of it. That's rad. All right. So the second question is, what is the number one tip you would have for a new investor looking to get started or a small time investor looking to take their business to the next level?
Learn marketing. That is the biggest key. A lot of new investors, they think they can only invest and make offers on what's in their account. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest limiting mindset that you have. You got to realize that there's millions of investors out there that have millions of private capital sitting on the sidelines not making anything. And it's actually easier to find money than it is to find the deals. Everybody could go to the county records right now, like the county appraisal district, and like type in Equity Trust or Quest Trust as like property owners, and it'll give you a whole list of people who've used their IRA to buy a property. Well, those people are the people you're targeting. They're investors, so they understand real estate. They've used their IRA, which has got to be on a passive level. They can't be active investing and living in this property. It's got to be like rentals or stuff like that. And 3, they've got money to invest. Mm-hmm. And we found that 67% of people that have an IRA have at least $150,000 or more in it. So learn marketing, get out and talk, get networking, make more offers. The more offers you make, the better offer you can get into it. And that's often the hardest thing. I don't want to say it's a fire ready aim, but kind of it is that way. Make offers, start networking. And the more you can learn about marketing, it'll help you in this business for a long run, because it's like you're not going to be just a real estate for a year. So don't put off the marketing skills and developing that thing and raising capital, because you're going to be doing this for a long time.
Mm-hmm. I think that last bit right there too, the long time, that is something that so many people do not take into consideration. Yeah. And I think a big thing with all this, as you're learning marketing, you're going through these processes, make sure you're doing it with a long-term time horizon.
Amen. It's all about planting seeds, man. Best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The next best time is today.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think where a lot of people get caught in real estate, especially on the wholesale side, it gets sold as like a get rich quick scheme. I can't tell you how many people we talk to that are like, I sent a batch of direct mail and didn't get a deal. Wholesaling's dead. I'm like, well, do it for another 3 or 4 months, work your leads, and I promise you'll get something.
Well, that's the thing, is they don't teach that. And this is one thing we harp on consistently. 80% of sales are made after the 5th contact.
Yep.
5th contact. That means you got to follow up. And most people don't understand that it's WORK, but you're right. You have a lot of people, this is get rich quick. Like, if somebody's telling you that, run. Run. Tell and say, how many times do I have to contact somebody? How many times do I have to follow up? Show me your call list, or show me whatever your list you're working. That's the thing. And you know what? Work is a 4-letter word, but work pays really good.
It does. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. So last question, where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you if you'd like them to do so?
Yeah, really easy. You can go to our mothership of a website, weclosenotes.com. You'll find out our classes there. Our podcast, The Note Closer Show, is also there. 745 episodes and
nice.
A couple million downloads, stuff like that. But yeah, weclosenotes.com, and you can connect me there. If you want to book a call with me, pick my brain, you can do so by going to talkwithscottcarson.com, and they'll take you directly to my calendar, and you can book a 30-minute call with me.
Perfect. Good stuff. Awesome, Scott. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Really appreciate you coming on. My words there. And seriously, guys, you should reach out to Scott because he's spitting some like straight just knowledge bombs here, and something that is, a very unique part of the business that tends to get overlooked. So you should absolutely reach out to Scott. Check out his show too. There's tons of opportunity here, and I will say I have a feeling that it is a lot less saturated than a lot of the other niches that you see out there in the real estate space right now.
Amen.
So yeah, I'm sure it is. So awesome, Scott. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. We really appreciate it. And if you guys enjoyed this show, please share it with everyone that you know that has any interest in real estate, finance, business, or, just likes listening to an interesting conversation that might open their eyes to the world of finance. So please share it with everybody. And also leave me a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. If you do that and you take a screenshot and you send it to me on Instagram at Mike_invests, I'll send you a free Collecting Keys t-shirt. So please do that. And aside from that, guys, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to y'all next week.